just following up on the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation trial, I wanted to discuss a little bit about the hearsay objection because I know that that's getting some attention. Essentially, the whole point of trial is to get the most reliable evidence in at trial so that the jury can appropriately weigh the pros and cons of all evidence that's presented. The reason why there is a hearsay objection is because hearsay tends to not be reliable evidence. Hearsay is an out-of-court statement used to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So what would be more reliable evidence than hearsay? It would be to call the actual declarant of the statement on the stand at trial so that the witness can be cross-examined by the adverse attorneys or the adverse party's attorney, right? That would present the most reliable evidence. That's why there's a hearsay objection, because if a witness on the stand is quoting someone else, it's just not as reliable as having the actual person who made the statement testify at trial. All right, now there are certainly exceptions to the hearsay rule, and that is why we're able to, for example, listen to the pre-recorded audio tapes of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, right? So they got into an argument that was recorded, and that evidence has been admitted at trial. The reason why it's been admitted is because that falls under a party opponent admission statement. So in the recording, and this is just, a summary, this is not verbatim what was heard on the recordings, but there was one recording admitted at trial where Amber Heard is saying something to the following effect. She says, I did not punch you, I did not deck you, I hit you. So sorry if I didn't slap you, but I hit you, I didn't punch you. Something of that nature. So that would technically be considered hearsay because it was a statement that was recorded outside of court. Amber Heard isn't saying this while she's testifying at court. This is a pre-recorded statement. And it's also being used to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So Johnny Depp's team is using that evidence, that hearsay evidence, to prove that she did in fact hit Johnny Depp. She is an aggressor, is what they're trying to prove. So that is hearsay, but it falls under the exception of party opponent admission. And what that is essentially the declarant of the hearsay testimony is saying something that is against his or her interest to say. So Amber Heard is admitting, I hit you. It is against her interest to admit that. And the whole concept is that people don't admit things that are contrary to their interest unless it is true. Okay, so this is just a human nature concept. For example, if you're on a date with somebody and the guy you're on a date with says, I'm just being perfectly honest here, you're not really my type, I am only interested in a one-night stand. So just putting that out there, do what you will with that information. Ladies, if you hear that from the person that you're on a date with, you should trust that statement because that statement is not going to help him get laid. Okay, that statement, it might help him. Some women will jump on that and be like, hell yeah, I just want a one-night stand too. But for the most part, that statement isn't going to help him get what he wants, which is to get laid, right? So you can trust that statement because it's not helping him. Now, if you were on a date with a guy and he's like, oh, I own a yacht, I own a private jet, I own a multi-gazillion dollar company, and I'm looking to settle down and get married and have your children and you're perfect and everything like that. Well, that statement is obviously not against his interest if it were true. So you have to take that statement with a grain of salt. He's probably saying that just to impress you and get what he wants, right? So those are statements that you should take with a grain of salt. But that's the whole concept behind the hearsay objection or the hearsay exception of a party opponent admission. The reliability of a statement against one's interest is just much higher. And she's a party opponent. Amber Heard is obviously the opponent to Johnny Depp in this trial. So now, what is non-hearsay? Non-hearsay would be something that is not an out-of-court statement used to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So an example of this, and this is just a hypothetical, this is not actual testimony that was elicited at the trial, but let's just say Johnny Depp were to testify at trial and say something like, oh, my daughter Lily Rose told me that Amber Heard is a blood-sucking, soul-sucking vampire. Now, that is not qualified as hearsay because for the most part, it's probably not an out-of-court statement that's being used to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So if Johnny Depp's team wanted that testimony to be admitted at trial, they're probably not doing it to prove that Amber Heard is in fact a blood-sucking, soul-sucking vampire. They're probably trying to have that admitted at trial to, evidence how Johnny Depp reacted to that statement that his daughter made, right? It could have been, what is the effect on the listener of that statement? So that's not considered hearsay. Okay, so those are some of the, rules as to hearsay. It obviously gets much more nuanced, but these are things that I've observed in the trial, and these are some of the questions that I've heard. So that's why, when Johnny Depp is testifying and he's about to say, and then my doctor said so-and-so, that's when Amber Heard's team objects immediately, and they'll be like, oh, objection, hearsay. Because Johnny Depp is about to recite an out-of-court statement that's being used to prove the truth of the matter asserted. For instance, there was one time where he said, I told my doctor that I, injured my finger in the large accordion doors at the house. And then he said, well, my doctor responded, that's an injury of velocity. Well, that statement is an out-of-court statement. It's a statement that the doctor gave him outside of the courtroom, and it would be used to prove the truth of the matter asserted, to prove that Johnny did in fact, injure or have the tip of his finger severed because Amber Heard threw a vodka bottle at his finger at a high velocity, right? So that's hearsay, and that's why it was objected to. All right, and it wouldn't be admissible. The more reliable evidence would be to actually bring in Johnny Depp's doctor, the one who actually made that statement, bring him into court, have him testify, and that way he can be cross-examined by Amber Heard's attorney, and they can, try to get to the bottom of it and prove put all of that evidence in front of the jury. So that's the little, brief little summary on hearsay.